Hi everyone, sorry about that. We got disconnected somehow, so apologize for being a little bit late. Welcome to our Building a Technology Strategy for Small to Medium-Sized Business webinar. My name is Molly Darrow, and I'm the Marketing Specialist for the Technology Services Division. For those of you who aren't familiar with Revolution Group, we are a technology consulting firm in Westerville, Ohio, specializing in managed IT services, Salesforce consulting services, and manufacturing ERP services. Our Technology Services Division offers small to medium-sized businesses a full line of managed services, from 24/7 help desk support to project work, account management, and virtual CIO expertise. The Salesforce Services Division provides innovative Salesforce CRM consulting, implementation and integration solutions that enhance sales and elevate customer service to maximize your ROI. Our comprehensive manufacturing ERP consulting services include system selection and implementation, optimization, and extended application development for disparate business system integrations. A few housekeeping items before we start the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and available on our website at www.revolutiongroup.com. The recording will also be emailed to you at the completion of this webinar, along with a 2-minute survey letting us know if you enjoyed the webinar and the topic. We have allotted an hour for this webinar today, and we will be answering questions at the end, but please feel free to submit your questions into the section labeled Questions on your GoToWebinar panel at any time. Now to introduce our Building a Technology Strategy webinar presenter, Gary Dyer. Gary Dyer has been in different IT roles for over 17 years, 13 of which have been with Revolution Group. Gary has been involved with our managed IT services team since its inception over 10 years ago, and is an account manager and virtual CIO for many Revolution Group accounts in a wide range of industries. Gary is a little under the weather today. He's being a trooper, still coming and doing this webinar for us. So if you hear him take any random pauses, or if you hear him drinking some water, he's trying to stifle a cough. So please bear with him. Gary, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thanks, Molly. Guys, I'll try my best not to cough through the webinar today. I do have a cough drops in, have my water, I'm ready to go. So today's agenda, we're going to discuss building a technology strategy. We're going to talk about the types of strategies. Where does your company fall with these types of strategies? The future of technology, applications, specifically a SaaS-based model. Don't worry, I'll explain that in a bit. Your infrastructure, how do we get you to where you need to go? And we'll do a little teaser at the end about security. So the types of strategies are classic IT strategy. You could have an agile IT strategy or a custom IT strategy. And let me explain what those differences are. So in a classic IT strategy, once you set a plan, it's most likely in place for many years to come. You set it and forget it. Your environment is usually predictable and stable, but hard to change. Companies who employ a classic strategy typically have set ways of doing things. This type of strategy makes it easy to transition old employees out and new employees in because there are well-documented and regulated processes and procedures to follow. Once you've decided on your end goal, steps achieving these goals are put into place. The classic strategy provides an environment where employees know exactly what tasks they're responsible for and what needs to be done to successfully achieve those goals. Rarely is something new added without the following proper vetting channels and approval processes. Decisions take longer to become approved, and because of that, opportunities can be missed. This is how most strategies have been set up for IT for the last several decades. Your next strategy is an agile strategy, which allows you to freely embrace the market and opportunity changes in a routine manner. This helps companies survive economic fluctuations. By having an agile strategy, you can turn on a dime and not miss a beat. This is a huge benefit in the world we live in today, where the economy may not always be the most stable. Transitioning, though, from an agile to from a classic to an agile strategy can be very difficult. You'll need to leave behind your old practices and ways of thinking. It takes time and effort from the top down in an organization. One of the biggest challenges is making sure the team you surround yourself with is just as agile as you and your processes are. If not, the whole strategy will crumble. It helps to make employees feel empowered to make decisions, within reason, of course, and not fear the consequences of having less than a successful endeavor. So in an agile strategy, it's easier for us to take on these new concepts that we'll be talking about today. Custom IT strategy. Strategies are created based on what is currently happening to your business around its external factors. So external factors include economy, competition, future forecasting, etc. Internal factors include staff skill levels and limitations, budgets, and then industry restraints. This will fit most of your business needs. You stop trying to fit your company into what your strategy is, into that box that it doesn't belong in, and then this custom strategy takes the best of both the classic and the agile strategies depending on what's right for your company. You kind of mesh the two together. These are reviewed and tweaked every year. To have a truly custom strategy, the strategy needs to continually change with your business. Every year, you hope your business grows and becomes more profitable. This can include hiring more employees, opening new locations, and having extra money for upgrades or new opportunities. Your custom strategy should always reflect these changes. If the strategy changes too often, it can be considered agile. If it isn't changing often enough, it can fall back into a classic strategy. We recommend revisiting your custom strategy at the same time every year across the changes, excuse me, every year to assess the changes that need to be made. So where does your company fall? Which strategy defines you best? Talk with your team about what type of strategy you incorporate. You'll find that you've been using one of these type of strategies and didn't know it. You may not have consciously thought this is an agile strategy or a classic strategy, but in fact that is what you've been using. Has it been working for you? How can you tell? Are you happy with where you are today? Do you have any measurements that indicate your progress? What are your benchmarks? How do you know what you're doing is working or not working if you're not measuring it? So find some kind of grading process to grade how you move your technology along to make sure that it's working for you. And who is involved in your process? Have you thought through who should be included in your planning session and who should not be? I've seen the best plans go astray when they didn't have the appropriate team members or departments involved. So what I mean by that, imagine having an engineering department not involved in your IT strategy, and they have a new version of AutoCAD, or they need to switch to Autodesk, and it's crucial for what they do, and that wasn't in part of your planning session, and that could totally throw your budget out of whack, again, throwing your strategy out of whack that year. So having the right departments and team members in the meeting is crucial. SaaS. If I look into my crystal ball, SaaS is the future of technology. So let's talk about that. SaaS stands for Software as a Service. This gets very confusing to the non-IT savvy folk. It's basically cloud. Cloud is a label thrown on many, many things. But let's explain some examples of SaaS. Think of Salesforce, Dropbox, Office 365, QuickBooks, or even Adobe. All of these now have a SaaS-based model, meaning the software isn't in your location, it's in the cloud somewhere. The easiest example I've seen to explain to business owners in the past is Gmail. Everyone understands how their Gmail works. It's a web browser, and they know the server is nowhere in their location. It's somewhere in the quote-unquote cloud. That's a SaaS-based model of that email. So what's going to change is you're going to focus on what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, and you're not going to care as much as how that happens. And let me explain using email again as my example here. In the past, you had an email server at your location. So when you had to send an email, you know you had to pay the money to have a server put in. You had to have people maintaining that server, and the email would go from your computer to that server and then to the outside world. In the future, that's going to go away. You're going to move your email to a cloud-based model like Office 365, and you no longer care about the back end. You pay a monthly fee for your email to just work. Versus in the old model, You have to have a server that has to replace on a 5-year rotation. The software has to be upgraded. You have to have patches. All of that shift changes. Excuse me. This also changes your spending. You change from a capital expense to a monthly expense. So today's model, or yesterday's model I should say, you have a large upfront cash outlay for the server and equipment. In the future model, it's just going to be a monthly payment over and over. Some of the benefits often have to do with patching. In the old model, updating your software or your line of business application was up to your IT teams to keep it current. And often, because of the work outage or the maintenance windows required, people would get behind on their patches. So you may be on version 8 when the rest of the world is on version 10. In a software-based model, in a SaaS model, that doesn't happen because the owner of the application, they're responsible for keeping it up to date, and they want all of their clients on the same revision. Another feature, and I'll talk about this more later, becomes part of your business continuity plan, because most of these SaaS-based software you can access from anywhere, be it Starbucks or from your office. So if there's a reason you can't get into your office, you can still access your software. So, and again, I'll talk about that more later. And then finally, less equipment on site. As you move to a SaaS-based model, you don't have large hardware purchases. You still have some expenses for incidentals, but your reliance on costly servers will be reduced dramatically. I'd like to dive into this a little bit further with a basic timeline to explain what I mean and why we see this as being the future. So if I go all the way back originally, we had a server that was on site to say who could log in. What is your username and what is your password? And for this demonstration, let's assume that's all it did. You had that server to say these 5 people can log in and log out. Then we started having a file server. So we have an H drive or whatever that may be where I store my Excel files there, my Word documents. So I put another server, could have been the same server, but let's just talk about had a server on site to store my files. Then email became popular in the late 90s. Everyone started getting their own email, so we had to put an email server in. And then application servers. So again, I like picking on poor QuickBooks. You had QuickBooks on your laptop, and then eventually you wanted to share a file, so when you would take your QuickBooks file and give it to somebody else in accounting who also had a copy of QuickBooks on their laptop. Then they made a version of it that worked on a server, so you'd have that application server, and then you would both work off of that. Then, when you see this little line here in my graph, applications like Dropbox or OneDrive or Box.net, they started being introduced where, hey, instead of having your Excel files on that file server, let's go ahead and put them in our service. So now that became your file server, so to speak. You didn't think of it like a server. You thought of it just as a place to store your files. You, again, like I said before, what you're doing became less important than how you're doing it became less important than what you're doing. I just need a place to store these files. Then came along Gmail, Hotmail, Office 365. It became less important to have an email server on premise when you have Office 365. Next, we're seeing, and what we're going to talk a lot about today, cloud applications. So having SharePoint, having Salesforce, a lot of these applications being in the cloud, so I don't, again, have that server or that hardware that I care about, I have it in the cloud. And the next where we see things going to is that cloud authentication also. And that's that next level where when we get to that point, and it's already here, we can start moving people to where they don't have a server on-premise at all. So on-premise, let's talk about that. On-premise just basically means the server is at your site. You can go to a room and touch it, poke it. There's your server. In a SaaS-based model, that server is in the cloud. An on-premise model, one of the problems with it is that large upfront capital expenditure. Someone has to buy that server. In a SaaS-based model, it's part of that monthly fee. There is no upfront cost, other than maybe the cost to get you there. Back to the on-premise, maintenance and upkeep is your responsibility. You have a team of guys or a managed service provider or someone who patches those servers and those applications. In a SaaS-based model, the upkeep and maintenance is not your responsibility. It's on the provider. So if you're in Salesforce will patch their own servers and keep you on the latest, greatest version. Back on the on-premise, the environmental conditions. Often, if you have a lot of servers, you know that you had to put some kind of special air conditioning, environmental controls. Some people had to change their fire suppression so that sprinklers would not go off in their server room. All of these things are part of it, and the server room had to be locked to keep it secure so not just anyone could go in where you kept all of your data. In a SaaS-based model, all those environmental issues go away. And then on that on-premise, and we'll talk about this a bit later, there's a life expectancy with each one of your servers. They should be in production for so many years, and then you have to buy it again. So even though it seems like a one-time purchase, it's not. It's a once every 5 years or 6 years purchase of that hardware equipment and then new licenses for that. When a SaaS-based model, there is no expiration date other than you terminating your contract. So it's just a continuing monthly fee. So things to consider about your applications. Do you have software that is industry-specific or highly regulated? So industry-specific examples could be Autodesk or AutoCAD. The reason why those stand out so much is because they require so much processing power and the size of the files are large. So that could hinder you in moving those to a cloud provider. Some industries are highly regulated. So think of HIPAA or PCI. Moving those to the cloud has a lot more hurdles to get through. But I'm already seeing some early adopters that have overcome these restrictions. And it won't be long till all applications that have these HIPAA and PCI restrictions will be able to move to the cloud as well. And I want you to think about this as well as you're thinking about in your strategy, and does it make sense for you to start thinking of the cloud now? It's the natural progression of things. Think about just the example I gave before. We started with software installed on your local laptop. Then we moved the software to a server. And now we're just discussing taking it from the server and putting it into the cloud. Hopefully you can see that this is the natural progression of where applications are going. And this is important for you to understand when you're coming up with what your strategy is going to be for your applications. Your line of business applications. Do they already have a SaaS model? I see a lot of options out there. And again, I keep talking about QuickBooks. QuickBooks offers a solid version that's already in the cloud. Now the difference I'm seeing, sometimes when you go to the cloud model and you already have the on-premise model, there are changes. So the screens may look different. Maybe some of your reports are different. These are a lot of things that you're going to have to evaluate when you decide, is it time for you to move to the cloud yet or not on those applications. And then does your line of business, whatever that is, your main applications you use, does that software offer a SaaS-based model yet? Do they already have one in the works? Have you talked to them? Are they planning on coming out with one? And if their answer is no, one of the things you may have to consider in your strategy is, when does it make sense for you to look at having another software? Because again, it's not if these things are going to the cloud, it's when. And do your applications integrate with other applications? This could hinder you. If you have an application that are on two separate servers and they talk to each other, and one of them does not support a SaaS-based version of that, and they don't have hooks to talk to each other, this could hinder your moving to the cloud. So a lot more thought will need to go into your strategy when it comes to that. This is something your IT team should investigate for you and help you make the plans to move. So how do you plan for it? The first step is acknowledge all this stuff I've been talking about. Acknowledge that it's not if it's going to the cloud, but when. And once you have that set in your mindset, your IT strategy may look different to you now. This should change how you're thinking about what are we doing, maybe not 2017, but over the next 5 years, what our plan is and how we get things going to the cloud. More things about your applications. What do you do in the meantime? So I'm talking about this as it's a definite, but I'm not giving you a time frame. I'm not saying this happens in 2017. So what if we are saying this happens by 2020? Well, what can I do right now to make sure that I'm doing the right things to help with this strategy? These are important questions. Make sure your software is up to date. This is crucial. Often I see applications that are a version or two behind, which causes its own issue. The SaaS-based are always on the latest model, and it's easier to migrate your data to a SaaS-based model if it's on the current version. If it's not, it adds a lot of steps, pain, and heartache to get you there. So make sure that you're on the most recent version, and then keep it there. Keep your software on the latest version. What if you want the benefits of the SaaS-based model, but your software doesn't provide it yet. You can reap the rewards of a SaaS-based model by moving your servers to a data center. So a data center then kind of becomes your own personal cloud. What this means, again, in my example before, that you can go into a server room and point to the server that your applications sit on. That is my QuickBooks server, so to speak. I take that server and we physically move it to a data center that has all the redundancies of a cloud SaaS-based model, and then we set your network up to talk to them. So now you are getting some of the benefits, the business continuity, the environmental controls, all of those benefits of the SaaS, but you still someday will need to move those to a SaaS-based model. But at least now we can get some of the benefits in the meantime. Also, as you buy new servers, make sure you're taking advantage of virtualization technology. It'll be easier to move to a hosted solution as an in-between if your servers are already virtualized. So something else to remember. On your infrastructure, what about your current setup? I'm not saying all of your infrastructure is going to go away, so nothing in your server room is going to exist 5 years today. That's not what I'm saying. You're still going to need all the things that get you to the internet. So your routers, your switches, your firewalls, your wireless, there's going to be several components there. Today I'm really talking about your applications and the actual servers. That's the talk. But getting you to the cloud is still going to be a component. And then I often hear, I just bought that server, and now you're telling me I got to move to the cloud? No, absolutely. I think you should keep your server until it depreciates. So we bought that server this year, great. So I believe a server has a 5-year lifespan. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But that means you have several years for it to depreciate. But it can help us start planning for, great, 5 years from today is roughly when we're going to be considering this. All of these numbers help us formulate our strategy, formulate when we'll be moving things. Do I have too much data? Is another question we get asked. It's not really the data so much as is it unstructured or structured. Do you have unstructured data? Unstructured data is data that follows no predefined organization. Having unstructured data is common for businesses because it encompasses everything from documents to images, videos. They're an internal format that has they're from internal and external sources. These things are put in just one big bucket and sorted around. If you organize this into different groups, so your taxonomy of these files can really help you realize what clutter or redundant files you have. So first, clean some of that up, and then see how much data stored you have. But this can be a concern, truly. If you have a lot of files like insurance agents where they have claims and have lots of photos, or your AutoCAD guys we talked about before, their drawings are huge. How much data do they have? If you're having 20 plus terabytes worth of data, that may hinder you because there's a monthly cost to how much data is in the cloud. But the price of storing this stuff in the cloud continues to drop, and drop quickly. So as we're looking at this strategy, we know that the price next year hopefully will be a little bit less than this year. Definitely the price in 4 years from today is going to be cheaper than today. So again, it goes back to make this a strategy of a long-term plan to get there. What will be left is the final question I get. I've sort of answered this in the first bullet, but your networking gear, your phone systems, your wireless infrastructure, all those things will be left. It's just a matter of how much and what. You'll always need access to things that get you to the internet. It's primarily the servers that will move. There are a lot of people working hard to help get you there. Your decisions would be who is going to be your carrier to get you there, who's going to help with your strategy to get you there. These are the things that are going to matter. Who are you going to partner with to be in the cloud? And as another note, we've talked about software as a service, the SaaS I keep mentioning, but there's also hardware as a service. So think of that firewall you have. Right now you may purchase it, and then 7 or 8 years later you have to purchase another one. They now have where you can do hardware service, so you purchase the firewall and you do it in monthly installments. Think of it kind of like leasing a car. And then when there's new features, you get those new features. When there's a new model, they swap it out and give you the new model, all for a monthly recurring fee. So most of IT is working towards switching to this recurring revenue model instead of a one-time upfront purchase. More on infrastructure. So we've talked about 5 years from today, possibly, or 2 years from today, whatever that makes sense for your strategy, moving you to a SaaS-based model. But that makes it to where we can't just overlook how we do infrastructure today. So let's talk about some of the basic infrastructure stuff we should do. And I've put some of my rule of thumbs on here. I often say, and anybody on my team will tell you, they've heard me say this over and over, I want to happen to your network before your network happens to you. So your workstations should last about 4 years. You should go through and take all of your workstations, divide them by 25%, and that's how many machines you should replace every single year. By doing it this way, you should be able to buy them all at once. So you get some discounts because you're buying them in bulk. You'll also be able to choose when you want the outage to be. Come in over a weekend and replace these 10 machines. These things make your network run smoother. Without doing workstations this way, the way most people did it in the past is in a reactive format. The HR lady had a PC, and until it died, she kept that machine. But it could have died on payroll day, and people don't get paid. Unfortunately, I've seen that happen more than once. Having a proactive plan and setting a date that we're going to replace them, again, makes you happen to the network instead of happening to you. Your servers are not as hard, fast of a rule here because 5 years is the average that I see. Now, I see some servers that, because they're very intense with a lot of processing and store a lot of data, get replaced sooner than 5 years. I see other servers that are just chugging along and don't do stuff that is mission critical, can last longer than 5 years. So that's more of a rule of thumb. Your batteries in your UPSs, so the battery backups you have supporting your servers and switches, this is the one I think surprises people the most. Those are only good for 3 years. After 3 years, they dramatically start losing their life expectancy. So let's say you get a nice expensive unit. The batteries can be replaced without replacing the entire thing. So I often see buy a big, expensive, nice APC unit, then replace the batteries every 3 years, and on the 9th year, you replace the entire unit. Again, just a rough rule of thumb. The firewalls depends on the feature set you need. They have a life expectancy too, but depending on the model you have, it can be anywhere from 6 years to 10 years, and I know that's a big swing. So it really matters if there's new features, or is it doing deep packet inspection? Is there stuff that it's providing extra value for me? And that'll help you determine when you need the new firewall. Again, talk to your IT team or your IT provider, and they'll help you understand a better idea of when that should be replaced. Switches are unique. I've seen some switches, like some of the old Cisco switches, that just run like army tanks, and they just keep cruising. If they are the appropriate speed, I don't see a need to replace them on a proactive schedule like I do some of the other equipment, unless, again, you need feature set. So what features would I need in a switch to make me replace it? Power over Ethernet is one. What does that even mean to me? The phones on your desk can be powered 2 ways. One, there's a power brick that you plug into the wall and give it power. Other ones, it takes it from the network cable plugged into the back, and it gets its power from there. Well, where it's really getting the power from is your PoE switches. So if I need that functionality for my new phone system, then I would need to replace the switches. If not, having a cold standby of a switch just sitting on the shelf in case one dies is plenty in most cases. Warranties and maintenance. I believe everything in your network that could cause a work stoppage should be under warranty or have a maintenance plan for it. So think of that application that I said before, that HR lady running payroll. Her machine should be under warranty. The server that runs the payroll software should be under warranty, and the application that runs payroll should be under maintenance. So that if any of those 3 components go down, your IT team can call, get a replacement part, get the support they need, and get her back up and running. Without those factors, yes, your IT team can get you going again, but it may be days versus hours. So anything that can cause a work stoppage should absolutely be under warranty. The exceptions are items that can be replaced quickly, or that you can have a spare on hand, like I mentioned with that switch before. Finally, how do I get you there? That depends on your business. You know, there's a lot of things we have to consider here. Does your business do a lot of intense applications that require high-end processing power or lots of data, like I mentioned before with the AutoCAD or the insurance claims that need terabytes for just their photos? That's something that's going to consider when we get you there. All those are factors that will come into your strategy. Also, bandwidth. Bandwidth is huge. The more we're moving things to the cloud, having a good internet connection, I think at this point we've all heard people talk about having a fiber connection, quote unquote. You may not even understand what that is, but it's synonymous with stability. You hear that often. Are you in an area where you have good internet connection that has the ability to have good speeds? This is something, again, your IT provider should help you with to make sure you have that access. Also, do you have remote users? Why does this even matter? It depends on what they're working on. Having remote users remote into your location means that you are the cloud for those people, because your site, if it is down, your sales team can't get back to you. So do you have a generator to keep your applications running? Do you lose a lot of money if those guys in the field can't do their jobs? These are stuff to consider. But if I move them to the SaaS-based model and you lose your main location because it's having a power outage, but your files are in storage in the cloud, your salespeople in the field can still continue to do their job. Again, providing value to being there. So these are things for us to really consider before we talk about how I get you there. All this comes into your strategy. So are you ready yet? So where do you stand today really depends on where your maturity model is. And what is a maturity model? I like to give you an example, and it may not be a good one, but I think it's easy to understand. There was a time when all of us were new to IT and using computers that we did not have antivirus. You remember when you first had to put antivirus on there, which seemed odd, but now we all understand we need antivirus. Same with battery backups. Every one of us have battery backups now for our servers. The concept matured. IT matured so that if I walk around to everybody on this webinar today and I go to your location, I guarantee you have some sort of antivirus, you have some sort of battery backup, because your IT is at least that mature. Now we can take that concept and extrapolate it over a lot of different topics. So how mature is your environment today? How mature are your policies and procedures? So do people understand how to process their jobs, where to store their files? Do they know what you're regulated by, and are they safely computing the way they should? All of these should be governed by your policies and procedures. And how mature you are should be a focus on, should we address these topics before I'm moving to the cloud? Absolutely, these are things we should be discussing. So work with your IT team to ask these questions. Are you virtualized already? Are you using Dropbox that's corporate-wide? Do you have off-site backups? Do you have stuff residing in a data center already? Each of these components are already a step towards moving to the cloud. So you may have already been down this road without realizing consciously that that's what you were doing. What are your line of business applications? Do they offer SaaS? If not, have you talked to them about the roadmap? Again, this is conversations you should be having with your software providers. And then finally, rank your company on these topics. If you're with us, we already have a maturity model for you where we can talk about these things. If not, talk to your current IT team and ask them where you rank. First, rank yourself, see where they rank you. Are you a little higher or lower than what you thought you would have been before and after this exercise? What steps are needed to get you to that next level? Plan that with your team. Be sure to get everybody involved. Take inventory of where you are now, how far you need to go. By having more people involved in the process, you'll decrease the possibility of missing a crucial step. And then finally, think about that remote workforce. I talked about that before. Are they accessing your applications out of the office, like through a terminal server or Citrix? If so, you're already being a cloud for them, which means you should think severely about the infrastructure that's supporting that. Is it the right model for you to be the cloud for them, or should you move this already to a data center somewhere else? And then you have a business continuity plan. This is the biggest surprise that I have people talking about over and over. Most people do not feel comfortable with their business continuity plan, or their DR plan, as we used to call it. In the DR plan, having the ability for people to still do their job when they cannot come into the office is a hidden bonus for them when they realize, wait, I can do all this from my laptop from Starbucks because it's in the cloud. So if you start moving your applications there, building a business continuity plan and putting the policies and procedures about how to access this remotely, you're going to be light years ahead of where you would have been just a few years ago. All right. Finally, my teaser I told you about before, I'll just briefly touch on a few security topics. We have a few webinars coming up in the next few months about advanced ways to protect your data. And we'll cover these topics in the next 2 months worth of webinars. But I want to at least kind of hint about them today. So training. As we've been studying more and more about training, and as I personally become more ramped up on the industry trends on security, what I've discovered from multiple sources, like Verizon's data breach team, like IBM's security team, over 90% of breaches, hear me again, 90% are caused by human error. They rather clicked a link they shouldn't have clicked on. They went to a site they shouldn't have went to. They put a USB drive that was infected into their machine. They, some way, by accident, hurt the company by their unsafe browsing habits. So training your employees, training your executives, training everyone on how to compute safely is going to be a must. The biggest trend to combat security over the next 5 years is going to be heavily focused around training. Encryption. Encryption is a must and way easier than you think. This should not be something that intimidates or scares any business owner. We can set your infrastructure up so that all new machines you buy them already encrypted. So you buy them with a chip to be encrypted, and we put them on your system. So it might not be a case where we need to spend the money or the project resources to encrypt everybody at once, but we can set up your infrastructure so that this year you buy your 25% of your machines, they all come encrypted. Next year, the next wave does, and the next several years, every machine will be encrypted. Or we shuffle them around and do them piece by piece. There's several ways to do that, but encryption should be a must. What this gets you is somebody loses their laptop or a laptop is stolen, which happens, they will not be able to access your sensitive data off of that machine. So encryption can help you very quickly. And it's one of the foundation requirements for HIPAA or PCI. So it's a good practice to start today. Two-factor authentication. Sounds complicated, but let me explain. Have you ever went to a website and you type in your username, your password, and then it will rather text you a code and you have to plug that in, or you have a little key fob and it randomly generates a code and you plug that in? Those are different forms of two-factor authentication. It's something you know or something you have. That is what we're going to see more and more of, two-factor authentication. The geeks like myself, we like to call it 2FA as an acronym. We love our acronyms. The two-factor authentication is going to help prevent users that have very common passwords and hackers guessing passwords to get into it or brute forcing them, or they have applications that hack into your password. By having another form, they can't hack that code that gets generated or that text to a user. So what we're seeing in the industry now is that your applications are starting to offer two-factor authentication. So when you get into Salesforce, you can have it require two-factor authentication. When you're getting into whatever your line of business app is, they should continue to start adding this level of security for you. And then business continuity. Now, you wouldn't think that'd be part of security, but it absolutely is. We have seen a huge rise of crypto, where it's this ransomware. You've heard it on the news. You hear lots of people. You may have had friends or may have been infected yourself, where they get a virus and it encrypts all your files, and you have to pay this money to get the decryption to get your files back. If you have a solid, robust backup solution, you can thumb your nose at them and say, forget it, I'll restore from 4 hours ago, and then the threat goes away. So by having a good backup plan and a tested one so you know that it works is actually a layer of your security, so you know you can always fall back on that. And then think about what you're going to do if you get compromised. Ask the question, just having a good backup used to be just a checkbox. Yes, we have backups, but how far back does your backups go? If today's Wednesday, but my backups are only good from Saturday, does that help you? You may need 4 hours ago. And if I recover, but it's going to take me until this coming Saturday to restore, that may not be good enough either. But if I say I can restore in the next 3 to 4 hours, that may be what you need. So understanding what your backups are, have your IT team explain to you how far back I can go and then how long will it take me to recover. Once you feel confident on those two answers, then it is part of your security, because you know if you're infected, you'll be able to recover these files. So what's next? This is going to conclude today's webinar. Hopefully there were topics that resonated with you. Your next step should be to take your notes from these topics that stood out to you and work with your IT team to see what your strategy is. And do you have SaaS, of course, incorporated into your strategy? If not, hopefully it will be after today. If you didn't take notes, don't fret. Molly said in the beginning, we'll post the recording of this webinar online shortly, and you can skip to the section that interests you the most. As always, feel free to reach out to us to discuss your strategy if you're a current client, or if you'd like to become a client, we'd love to assist you in building a strategy. Thank you for tuning, and make it a great day. And I made it without coughing too long.
You did great. Thank you, Gary. Before we go, we have a couple of questions. Thank you guys for submitting your questions into the questions section. It looks like we have 3 here, Gary. And I wanted to make mention really quickly before we get into the questions. Gary touched on 2-factor authentication, and he also touched on how often you should replace your servers. We have recently written blogs on both of those topics, so if anyone's interested in learning more specifically about those 2 topics, let us know, or visit our website at www.revolutiongroup.com where you can access those. Okay, so jumping into the questions. First one here. Are there applications that I should not move to the cloud?
That's a good question. And there's more to the why of that. So depending on, are you regulated? Do you follow the HIPAA compliance? Or do you follow the PCI compliance? These are going to be things that you're going to have to really watch about moving those to the cloud. The answer could be more that they're not ready to move to the cloud today, but you will eventually need to move them to the cloud. So those are the questions that we'll need to answer about those specific applications. And then again, is it cost prohibitive? Do I have, again, like I used my example before, 20 terabytes of data on the single server? It may not be cost prohibitive to go ahead and move that today. But these are things that we'd work on with you to figure that out.
Okay. Second tier. Should we still research SaaS, or software as a service, if we already are in a data center?
Yeah, in this example, I would assume that you're meaning you've taken your servers, like I said before, and you physically put them at a data center. The answer is yes, you still need to require SaaS, because in this model, you still have physical servers somewhere. They're not at your location, but they do exist. So that means they have to be on a 5-year rotation. There's still patching and maintenance required on those servers. Whereas a true SaaS model, you're paying the software vendor to patch the servers and maintain it, and that's their headache instead of yours. So yes, absolutely still consider SaaS if you're in that model.
Okay. Third question here. You talked about the cloud versus on-premise. Which is cheaper?
And that's always a challenging question, because there's a lot of factors that come into that. When we factor your on-premise solution, we should really also be factoring in what is the depreciated value of your air conditioning system that you had to buy just for the servers on your location. What about your maintenance contracts for your in-house employees that maintain it, patch it, update it, or your managed services providers to patch it, maintain it? There are a lot of factors that come into play to keep that server. So it's really not just a one-for-one cost. But I will tell you, there's a lot of factors. They're about a wash at this point, and I think eventually over time it may become cheaper to be in the cloud. But today, if cost is your driving factor, I don't know that this is going to be the reason to move is over cost. It's going to be over functionality, truly.
Okay, great. Thank you. So everyone, that concludes our Building a Technology Strategy webinar. Thank you for attending, and we hope you got valuable information on how your technology strategy should be customized to fit your specific business needs. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your day.